You won't find this in any history book. They tried to burn it, to bury it, to make us forget. This is Wismar, 1964, and this is the story they silenced, the story of a forgotten Indian exodus. And in my hands, I have a first-hand account of a 14-year-old boy who witnessed everything.
Shots were fired at my dad and my brother-in-law. My parents were so scared by the night's events that they made up their minds to leave the house to burn. It was hard to imagine that my father could now turn his back on his most valuable possession. But he put the lives of his family above any physical belongings and recognized the need to move on. Smoke filled the sky as abandoned houses went up in flames all around us. My mind conjured up a picture of hell. The Indian population were experiencing their version of hell.
In the heart of British Guyana, nestled along the Demerara River, lay Wismar, a town built on bauxite but sustained by community. Here, roughly 18,000 Indians and Africans, Hindus and Christians once lived side by side. A true mosaic of life. Of those, only 3,000 were Indian, mostly Hindu families running shops, farming land, or working at the mining company Demba. A kind of paradise, one survivor called it.
The two major races, East Indians and Africans, lived harmoniously side by side and not in racial groups. Socially, they would mix freely, especially at clubs and restaurants. Intermarriage was not uncommon among them. I must say that my best friends were Africans, and we all ran around and played together, irrespective of race or color. So for the 10 years of my life in Wismar, I was a happy-go-lucky kid.
But even paradise can be poisoned, and in 1964, politics would begin to poison Wismar to its core. By the 1960s, Guyana was on the edge of independence, but instead of unity, there was division fueled by Cold War paranoia and racialized politics. On one side, you had Chedi Jagan and his left-leaning PPP, drawing support largely from the Indo-Guyanese. On the other, Forbes Burnham and the PNC, favored by the Afro-Guyanese. These two leaders, once allies and founders of the PPP in 1950, became bitter rivals. Burnham split off in 1957. Jagan's Marxist leaning sent shivers through Washington and London, who feared another Cuba brewing in their hemisphere. The CIA covertly funded Burnham's PNC. The British manipulated the voting system to proportional representation, allowing Burnham to seize power in a coalition despite Jagan winning most of the votes. And when Jagan won in 1961, violence erupted. Indo-Guyanese were blamed, beaten and burned. The stage was set. The seeds of the Wismar Massacre were sown long before May 25th. Three days before the massacre, an Afro-Guyanese couple, the Seeleys, were murdered on the coast. The case was never solved, and no one knows who did it. But those rumors, they blamed the Indians, and political leaders used it to ignite a firestorm of revenge. Lies became gasoline, and Wismar went up in flames. Within hours, Indian businesses were looted in Georgetown. False rumors flew. Mobs formed. In Wismar, PNC politician Robert Jordan held public meetings inciting African residents to rise up. Misinformation was no longer just words, it became a weapon. And in one quiet Indian home, a father made a decision.
During the week preceding May 25, 1964, there was evidence of marked tension in the Wismar Christiansburg area. Africans threatened to beat Indians and burn their houses. Indians were afraid, but most thought that this threat of violence would pass too, like the ones before. My father, after assessing the situation in Wismar, decided that he needed to resort to Plan B in the event that there was a full-scale attack on Indians. He had a premonition that things could get dangerous in Wismar, and he needed a place of refuge in that event.
He was right. Stories like this were buried. They were burned, like the homes that once stood in Wismar. But today we're rebuilding, one truth at a time. If this history matters to you, and if you believe these voices deserve to be heard, please like this video, comment on it, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. It tells YouTube that this story matters, so let's keep it alive. At 1 a.m., the boys' house was surrounded.
My old man then backed into the river and was soon trying to dodge bricks and bottles thrown at him. He dived into the water. He was struck several times. A few men with the intent of murder had boarded a small river ferry and were approaching him with a long steel pipe. The police came in a Land Rover truck and rescued him. The drunken black revelers shouted threats that they would kill all coolies, rape their women, and burn their houses. One family was confronted by a large mob who beat the wife unconscious, repeatedly stabbing the husband, and then continuing to kick and molest two smaller children.
By morning, all hell broke loose. Molotov cocktails, acid, cutlasses, gasoline, women raped on beaches, elders beaten with poles, over 200 Indian homes torched. The police? They couldn't stop it. They didn't stop it. Some even joined in.
With my dog Rover following me unwillingly, my rooster and my basket of groceries, I marched barefooted behind the two volunteers. My mom took what cash she had and put some essential clothes in a small bag. She was so sad and tearful that she was leaving everything she owned to be burnt or looted by others. Later that day, Tuesday, May 26th, we boarded a steamer, the RH Car, and watched with sadness and anguish the towns of Wismar and Christiansburg, the place we called home, slowly give way to trees and vegetation as we headed down the river to an uncertain future.
Inside the Wismar police station, hundreds of Indians huddled.
When we arrived in Georgetown the following day, we were met at the wharf by security forces as well as by angry blacks, many of whom shouted, "Kill all the coolies." Many threw stones and bottles at the poor, helpless, terrified refugees. Few wept, but the hundreds of children appeared terrified and frightened. Out of the 1,300 that arrived, 300 found shelter with relatives, while the rest slept on the concrete floor of the pier warehouse in Georgetown, huddling in fear while covered with tarpaulins and rice bags. I stayed on at the station and witnessed the horror of man's hate, lawlessness, and spite towards his fellow man. Every half hour or so, the police Land Rover would leave and return shortly thereafter filled with Indians who were injured. I saw women wrapped in bed sheets, their clothes having been stripped from them. I learned that those women were raped. I was told of a few women who were chased onto the beach, raped repeatedly.
Even there, safety was fragile. Ashes from burning homes rained down. The sky turned red. The air smelled like fear. Over 2,000 Indo-Guyanese were evacuated from Wismar. The majority were Hindu. This once thriving community vanished. This massacre was never prosecuted. No one was held accountable. Instead, Forbes Burnham chose May 26th as Guyana's official Independence Day. But for many Hindus, it became a day of mourning. A government commission later revealed the attacks were organized. Indian homes were mapped out in advance. African neighbors formed bucket brigades to protect their own homes, while Indian properties were left to burn. Even security forces were implicated in looting and violence. This wasn't a riot, it was a pogrom.
I had frightening nightmares of our ordeal in Wismar many weeks later. I usually dreamt of an evil creature that took different shapes. It chased me through a nightmarish landscape. No matter how I tried to run, my feet felt leaden, and I knew that my only way to escape was to force myself to wake up. I would wake up in a sweat, with the bed sheet wrapped around my wet body, as I cowered in fear.
The Wismar Massacre wasn't just violence, it was erasure. It was an Indo-Caribbean genocide in miniature, silenced, minimized, left out of the textbooks and national memory. The vast majority of those victims were Hindu. Yet, survivors lived, and today, their children, like me and you, we ask, why didn't we know? Why did no one tell us? Well, I'm telling you now, because memory is resistance, and silence, as I said before, is complicity. If you carry Indo-Caribbean blood, this story is your inheritance. If you're Hindu, it's your duty to remember. And if you're human, it's your reminder of how easily neighbors become monsters when fear is weaponized and justice is delayed.
I want to go back to the story of my life in Wismar and try to analyze the situation that resulted in my desperate flight from my childhood home. I do not hate the people who brought about our destruction in Wismar, nor do I condone any acts of violence towards anyone. Hatred breeds hatred and blocks out clear thinking, peace and progress. I sincerely hope that the diversified people of my native land can come together.
I'm telling this story because it's something that needs to be remembered. Not to blame anyone today for the actions of the past, but to process these events so that we can move forward and never forget. I don't see any of my Guyanese brothers and sisters wanting to be perpetual victims, but I know that these stories have remained hidden and have caused continued suffering of the Guyanese people. From all of this suffering, a people still emerged. Let's not shy away from our history, but let's tell it in a way that reminds the world of what can happen to anyone. And may we never let anyone burn again. Thank you once again for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe to my YouTube channel, and I'll be sure to catch you in the next one. Om Shanti.